Thank you for being so quiet. We've got to wait a second before the cameras activate before we start. Welcome everybody, thanks for coming. Everybody, thank you, appreciate you guys coming. This is the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting. This is not the regular meeting, this is our budget hearing. We followed by the regular meeting for September 24th, 2013 at 6:45 p.m. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Richard Head?
Present.
Susan Ryder?
Present.
John Marizan?
Present.
Mark Berry?
Present.
Julie Gottschall? Present. Leanne Charlo?
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum and we are coming to order. I ask everybody to be patient with us because we have a formal budget hearing that we have to go through that we've allotted about 15 minutes for. Might take less. That it's a legal requirement that we're going to vote on a budget later on tonight, so we have to have this brief budget hearing. So if you guys just be patient, it's a process that we have to go through. Tonight, the purpose of the meeting is to allow public comment on the proposed 2013-2014 school budget. People desiring to speak should be recognized by the president, state their name and address, and make their comment. Written comment may be handed to the president as well. So we're going to start the evening by asking our administrators if they have any comments they'd like to make.
No, the budget has been presented to the board at the last couple of meetings. The board approved a tentative budget at the August meeting. The budget has been available for public inspection for the past 30 days. I have not been contacted by any members of the public to provide any input this evening. And as soon as the budget's adopted later at the regular meeting, it will be published on the website tomorrow.
Jean, anything?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Are there anybody from the public who would like to comment on the upcoming budget? Any of you guys? Anybody? And then we also give the opportunity to board members if they would like to comment on the budget we are going to be dealing with later on this evening. I just wanted to give a really brief overview of the process we went through to get here. This evening we're going to see our third, same version as last time, but it'll be our third viewing of the budget for the fiscal year 2014. Our first discussion was on August 13th when we discussed the very first draft, and a considerable amount of time was spent drilling down into the details of the budget and the budget planning process. We came out of that first meeting asking staff to take another look at the budget from a different perspective, and this time eliminate contingencies that are typically included. A second discussion occurred on August 27th, where we had an in-depth conversation regarding this modified zero contingency budget and all the implications. In my mind, there were several big takeaways from that discussion. Probably the biggest takeaway was a reiteration of the way we need to view the interaction between the budget and the levy that we'll be dealing with in December. We also talked about the historical practice in this community, as well as many others, was one of levying taxes to the maximum amount versus levying to a budget. So this is new for us. By the end of the evening, our conversations definitely were leaning in the direction of levying toward a budget. Another takeaway had to do with the board's comfort level with drawing on our reserves, our fund balances for unplanned expenditures. We discussed at length the most unstable budget items and seemed to feel comfortable that we could address any surprises comfortably with our reserves. Another big takeaway is that nothing is being cut with this budget, nothing at all. And finally, it was pointed out that going forward, any fund balance conversations must also be included in any discussion of the budget and the levy, and that we cannot address any of these issues independently. So if there's any other comments from the board members.
I'd like to make sort of a summary comment, if I may.
Sure.
Just in general, so everyone here understands this and the general public understands this, that the revenue that we're dealing with this year is down. And Jane, if I'm off by a few numbers, raise your hand. We're down about $3.5 million from where we were the previous year. It's almost 20% less revenue this year, and that's mostly as a result of the decision that was made to lower the tax levy last year, which benefited taxpayers. If you saw your tax bill this year, you know it went down because of that decision. And in addition, the abatement that we took to pay down, at least in advance, part of the bond issue. So we're down roughly $3.5 million in revenue. Expenses in the education side of the budget overall is up about 2%. And if you break that down between salaries and benefits are kind of a fixed number, That represents roughly 81% of the budget. What's left is about $1.6 million, and that went up $76,000. So I think that's a pretty solid budget. None of the monies, as Mark indicated, were taken out of instruction or in preparation to meet Common Core standards. That's going to be required. So that leaves us, by the way, with a $2 million deficit this year, correct? Roughly, $2 million deficit. We understand that, but it also leaves us with a remaining $14.8 million in reserve. And we have some plans for that that you'll be hearing about in the near future, one of which is looking at how we can save taxpayers money on the existing school bonds. We're going to be talking about defeasing those bonds and potentially abating those bonds and seeing a several $1 million savings. So part of the reserve that we have is going to be utilized to do that. Not a large amount, but roughly 40% of that. It'll still leave us a pretty significant reserve to deal with in the future. And in addition, we're going to look at flattening out at least the debt portion of the tax rate so that we don't have these ups and downs that we've had in the past. So it's more predictable from your perspective in the future if we're able to do that. So those are our goals, and that's where we are. I just wanted to provide a quick overview. Thank you.
Anybody else want to bring anything forward for discussion or comment? I just want to say also that I appreciate all the hard work that went into these budget discussions. It was all new territory for a lot of us and the district, and everybody worked really hard at it, and I think we did a good job, so thanks. I guess that's it for the budget hearing.
You close it.
I just want to say to you guys, thank you for sitting so quietly. Very difficult conversation. We were talking about money. It's not that exciting, and it's about how we're going to spend money to keep the schools looking really cool. So I appreciate you guys. You've done a great job. And we'll get to your part in a matter of just a couple minutes. All right, so may I have a motion to adjourn this budget hearing at 6:58? So moved. And I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we are adjourned from our budget hearing, and we're going to go right back into our regular meeting. So welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for September 24th, 2013. And we do appreciate all your patience. May we please have a roll call, Julie, for the regular meeting?
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Present.
John Marizan?
Present.
Mark Berry?
Present.
Julie Godshall, present. Leanne Charlo?
Present.
Richard Haig?
Present.
All right, thank you. So we have a quorum and we can come to order. We would like to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we were hoping that all you guys could stand and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So whoever feels brave enough can start us. The flag's right here.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good job. Thank you. We are going to rearrange just a little bit to accommodate all these guys. We're going to move past the public comment and go right into the student presentations? Or are we going to do the
Go ahead and do the new teachers.
Okay.
They're here too.
We would like to also introduce item 6. There's a couple new teachers we'd like to introduce, and Jean is going to take us through that.
Actually, Tracy Rorick, where are you? Okay, Tracy, if you could stand up and introduce our new teachers for the year.
Introduce yourself, too.
I'm Tracy Rourke. I'm assistant principal at Lake Bluff Elementary School. Where are you? There they are, back there. We have 2 new kindergarten teachers this year. Diana York teaches our half-day section of kindergarten, and then in the afternoon works with our students through our response to intervention program. And Julie Hockman, she is a full-day kindergarten teacher who started this year. Thank you.
Both of our teachers are ELL certified and have done a wonderful job transitioning into the building and getting their classroom set up. So we welcome our 2 new teachers to LBES.
Welcome. Thanks for coming. Okay. I think now we're going to go to the student presentations. We'll come back to public comment if anybody needs to make a comment later on.
All right, poets, if you could stand. And good evening, school board. I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you so much for allowing these wonderful poets in to share their work with you this evening. Just a little bit of background. Paige Soule, Mrs. Soule, is our library media specialist, and I am Kelly Bay, reading teacher on the enrichment team. We have worked this year to create opportunities for students to enter their work into writing contests so that we can celebrate their great talents. Here before you, we have our September winners of our writing contest, Describable Me, in which poets were asked to write a poem about fall, back to school, friendship, community, or teamwork. And we have our kindergarten through 5th grade winners here to read their poems to you this evening. We have practiced. They are going to do their best to speak loud and clear, but we may have to remind them. And if you wouldn't mind, audience, please saving your applause to the very end so we each have a chance to read our work. Here they are. I'll start him off. This is Jaden. He is a kindergartner. I'm going to start him off with his poem, and he's going to do his best to read the end of it. You know what I'm going to ask all of our poets to? Let's take a big, deep breath. I know this is kind of nerve-wracking. Here we go. The fall leaves.
Right now the leaves are what? Pretty good. One day they are going to, then they will fall. Oh, perfect. Good job. Okay, thank you. And then here is Ella. Wait, hold on. And then Ella. Okay, this is Ella, and she is in kindergarten. And her poem is called Friendship. My friend's name is Katie. Like me, she once was a baby. Like me, she likes beads and drawing. Like me, she has long hair and likes coloring. Good. She is my
best friend.
My friend
Katie.
Who once was
a baby.
Just
like me.
Yay! Good job. Okay, and then here's my. There you go. Okay. All right. Hit it.
Hi, my name is Ben. I'm in 2nd grade, and I have a poem called Back to School. Summer's almost over, my teachers are cool. I have a new class, LBES rules. To learn new things, we need learning wings. Unchewed erasers and sharpened new pencils are like fork and spoon, my utensils. Now it's the start of the year, pack up your things and go. This year will be good, it will be a great show. Friendship. We all took a dip together on the sea of we. We became friends forever. We became friends forever on the ship of friendship.
Good job, Seamus. You want to take that back to you? Okay.
Hi, my name is Graydon and I'm in 1st grade. It's that time of year. I'm ready to cheer. School is here.
And this is Ryan, and she's in 1st grade.
I have a friend. She likes pens. I like to draw with her. And then she goes home, and I go home, and then we meet again tomorrow. Fall is a wonderful season. My name is Kate, and I'm in 2nd grade. Fall is a wonderful season. It's a time to play, it's a time to read. Its leaves fall down from its trees. Fall is neat, fall is nice, fall is a wonderful season.
You're okay, right? Do you want me to do it? Okay, you got it.
I'm Helene, and I'm in 5th grade. The title of my poem is Autumn/Fall. Fall is when the breezes blow and trees are draped in color. Leaves are descending down the trees, leaving and returning next spring. Hello, I'm Rachel, and the title of my poem is Teamwork, and I'm in 3rd grade. When you work together as a team, it helps you reach your dream. Dance recitals, playing ball, teamwork helps you do it all. Students working as a team makes the teachers not scream. When everybody acts as one, everybody has more fun.
Hello, my name is Alessandra, and I'm in 3rd grade. My poem is about my teacher. Pencil, paper, writing too. I love nice teachers just like you. You always make the learning fun, which makes it easy to get it done. I love the teachers that are silly. I'm glad I have Mrs. Willie.
Hello, my name is Shea Scales, and I'm in 3rd grade. My poem is about going back to school. Back to school, I sit in my empty seat, a very sharp pencil with a flat blank sheet. My teacher says, hello, hello, how fine you look today. 1 foot, 2 foot, my class comes in on the very first day. A bluebird flies by the window, I smile and bow my head. I dreamed of letters in a line, so I got a book and read.
My name is Talia, and I'm in 4th grade. My poem is about going back to school. Going back to school means leaving the pool, and it's going to get cool. Leaving the summer is a real big bummer. Exploring nature is always fun in the sun. In the summer, there's no homework, what a perk. But going back to school is really cool.
My name is Tony, and I'm in 4th grade. The season I love, where you see colorful leaves in the fall. The time when you play ball, it's the time for pumpkin picking, the time for football kicking. Fall is a beautiful season when people are not freezing.
My name is Julia. And I'm a 5th grader. The crimson, red, orange, golden, and yellow leaves are falling. Pumpkin pies baking. Schools are opening. Birds flying south. Kids playing the leaves. The sound of leaves crunching. The earth is long down. Cozy in bed with a cup of tea. Nippy nights, and at the break of dawn, frost snakes on the ground. Summer is taking a rest. These are all the qualities of fall.
Hello, my name is Riley, and I'm in 4th grade. My poem is called Friends. Friends, they lighten up a gloomy day. They make you beam when you're afraid. They're there for you when you need them and when you don't. They will stand up for you no matter the opponent. But the greatest feeling is that you're never alone. Hello, my name is Kerrigan, and my poem is called Principal's Pal. We are so blessed to have this special guest and be at the school that she runs the best. We are like eggs, she is like a bird, and together we make a nest. I am so honored to go home and rest and dream good dreams about Dr. West.
So these are our students, and they did a great job. You could read more about them in the paper on our website. And, you know, of course, we had 125 entries, so I'm sure you're really excited to hear them out. I'm just kidding. But these will be in the library for all the students to peruse. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I want to say thank you very much for your poems. You're all very brave to stand up here and read. And I wanted to say something to the first young man who stood up and said, I remember the first time I stood behind this microphone and had to speak, I felt like crying too. So it's not unusual. And now we're going to have the middle school do the same thing, right?
They're going to be presenting in a different way.
Okay.
I think the kids.
Good job, guys.
Pretty good. Hey, Jason.
kids are. I can't remember what my kids are actually. How are you? I'm good. And now we're going to follow up with students from the middle school, and the principal, Nate Blackmore, is going to introduce this whole section.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow, but we will do our very best. I'm actually going to turn things over to Mallory Smith, our library media specialist, who worked very closely with a group of girls who accomplished a lot, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that. So Mallory, I'll turn things over to you.
This is a project that I would love to take credit for. However, I literally did nothing other than meet and order the water bottles. These girls that I had the honor to work with, from beginning to end, they came up with this project. They designed the water bottle, the logo. They decided exactly how they wanted to carry it out, and they made it happen. They made 2 wonderful videos, one of which I know is on the school website. And they want to tell you about their results, because when they are dedicated to a cause, nothing stops them.
Hi, I'm Camille Valentinsik, and I worked with Elizabeth Kissel, Tyler Gutman, Anna McCall, and Allie Jackson on the Water for Ghana project. In 6th grade, we all made a project for social studies about a global issue, especially in Africa. And then out of our class, we picked the best one, I guess, and the best one out of every class was going to be allowed to continue on with the project in 7th grade. And so when we got to 7th grade, Indira Roy was in our group too, but she moved. So the 6 of us all decided that we wanted to work on the Water for Ghana issue. And so we all came together and we researched the issue, and we made a PowerPoint about it and a video showing why the people in Ghana needed water. And so we played the video at one of the assemblies, and our goal was to raise over $250 for the people in Ghana. And within 2 days of our starting point, we actually had reached our goal by almost double. So by the end of the 2 weeks in which we had the fundraiser going, we raised over $1,000. And we did this we ordered water bottles like that, and we gave each advisory one, and people would donate their loose change, and it all added up to be over $1,000. And then we donated it to Ghana, and we know that it's helping them now. We're very happy that we got to help the people of Ghana by just giving them water.
Thank you.
Wasn't there a story that was written and then sent to Gazebo News also from this group?
I was going to mention that. There is a story that was posted recently on the Gazebo News that also has a link to the video that was shown at our assembly. The students did an outstanding job putting that together, and it was certainly a very compelling story. And so I would encourage anyone who hadn't already read that article to go ahead and look under the school section, and you'll see it there as well. It's still up, at least as of this morning it was. I checked to make sure. So these girls did a great job. I know you mentioned Indra wasn't able to be here with us. Indra has moved to California, but was a very active participant last year, so I wanted to make sure to mention her name. Thank you all very, very much. Ms. Smith, thank you for your assistance.
Hey, they even wrote the article.
They did. They did. So, thank you guys. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Great job, girls.
And if you guys want to stay, you can. And anybody who needs to leave, that's not a problem. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Now we're going to circle back up to public comment, item number 5. So we welcome comments from our staff, parents, and constituents. The board president will determine the format and ground rules for comments in the best interests of the audience and the agenda. We will be offering another public comment period at the end of the meeting, so if anybody would like to address the board now, please feel free to do so, or you will also have an opportunity at the end of the evening. Anybody need to say anything? If not, we're going to move on to 7B, which is the student achievement reports, and our Director of Curriculum and Student Services, Kevin Rubenstein, will do that presentation for us.
Soon to be doctor.
Should remind you all of that. That's the work that I get to do. I am pleased to be talking with you this evening about our student achievement from the last school year as measured by ISAT, and hopefully the screen will decide to turn on here shortly. And so you have in your board packets this evening just a little bit of a report that we put together for you. So some learning objectives, we always like to start with those in our classroom. So learning objectives tonight, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the purpose of the ISAT, talk with you about some of our student scores in aggregate, overall the grade levels, student scores for our subgroups, and then look at the future work that we need to do. So the ISAT, every state is required by federal law, the No Child Left Behind Act, to adopt standardized measure for measuring student achievement in for students in grades 3 through 8 in math and reading. Assessment is taken during the first week in March, and so it is right after Casimir Pulaski Day, and scores are received during the month of August and are embargoed by the state of Illinois until October 31st. So they will be released to the public at that time. New in 2013, this was the first year of the assessment that approximately 20% of the questions were based on student understanding of the new Common Core standards. And you'll see towards the end of this presentation that number picks up a little bit. Also new this year, and we talked about this with you in the spring, was that ISB, the State Board of Education, raised the cut scores that were required for students to meet or exceed standards. And so on the next slide, I have for you just some examples of the changes in the cut scores. So you can see in the purple there that the cut scores went up anywhere between 4 points and 38 points to be able to meet state standards. And so that's just an example there. Every state was also required to adopt a plan for how we were going to get students to 100% proficiency by 2014. And so it started a while back with our numbers being rather low. Last year it was also supposed to go up to 92.5%. The state gave us a reprieve, and we were at 85%. This year we're supposed to be at 92.5%, meets or exceeds, so that the goal is that by next year everybody will be meeting or exceeding state standards. So the requirements for that, all students must be able to meet or exceed state standards. In 2013, 92.5% of students must meet or exceed standards, including all the subgroups. So the subgroups that we have in this district are students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and then white students is also considered a subgroup. And some definitions for you. In order to, these are general performance descriptors that are put together by the state. So for a student to exceed standards, they're going to demonstrate advanced knowledge and skills in that subject matter. They creatively apply knowledge and skills to solve the problems. And it goes down from there. So students are demonstrating proficient knowledge to meet the state standards. Below standards would be that they demonstrate basic knowledge, and likely show some gaps in their learning. And then in academic warning, which is the lowest level, the student work demonstrates limited knowledge and skills, and because of major gaps in their learning, they're applying their knowledge and skills ineffectively. So just to get us kicked off right here, our scores in reading are put up here for you. These are broken down by the 4 different performance levels, so and into each of the grade levels. And in the next slide, you will see them in aggregate and just broken down into 2 subcategories of meets and exceeds versus warning and below. So what we see here are higher numbers than before of students who did not meet or exceed state standards. And that was expected to happen because of the increase in the cut scores during the school year. Doesn't mean that our students know any less. Doesn't mean that our students are not working hard or that our teachers are teaching them less. It means that the state raised the cut scores to align with more rigorous college and career readiness benchmarks. And so we saw a slight drop off in our scores during the school year in reading. And aggregate scores in reading, the blue up here is the meets and exceeds, broken down by the grade levels for the last school year. And so we range from a low of 75% of the students meeting or exceeding in our 8th grade class last year, current freshmen in high school, to a high of 90% meets and exceeds at the 5th grade level last year. And so we are, again, still really digging into this data. There's a lot of data to work through to sort of see what that means. Any questions about sort of the aggregate scores in reading?
The group probably has a number of questions. Just a quick one. It's interesting to me that we have a fairly high score at the 5th grade level. 90% of our students meet or exceed. And then it goes down from there. You'd think almost the opposite, that once they acquire the skill set, that it would continue to improve year after year.
That is one logical explanation. Another explanation here is that over the course of these students' lives in our schools, they have experienced a number of different curricular initiatives, some put on by us, some required by the state government. And so whenever the state of Illinois raises the standards, there is always an effort to backfill and to make sure that students are still acquiring new knowledge. So for example, in 6th grade, if a standard suddenly came along, as it did during this last school year, and a standard suddenly came along that required students to be able to do something at a proficient level, and we had not taught that in 5th grade, which was the situation, then those students would be at a disadvantage, and so we would have to increase the pace of our curriculum so that students are able to backfill their knowledge. And so that is sort of, we are constantly, schools all across the state and all across the country are constantly working to sort of catch up. And our current 2nd graders are the first class to have only the Common Core standards as their core.
So you're describing what has historically been a bit of a moving target then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the other piece which we've shared with you, but I think for purposes of the audience, because the cut scores have been raised, districts throughout the state are experiencing these scores. And on the rubrics that the states did furnish us, as far as if we would have looked at the old system, would we have improved? We did improve on our scores if we would have kept the same cut scores. So even though it looks like our scores have gone down, the standards went up and the benchmark went up. And I think the other thing that it's important to note is we not only, we use Common Core as a nice benchmark basis, but we really look for much more detailed and much more in-depth curriculum beyond Common Core.
Absolutely.
For our kids.
You know, another thing that strikes me about this is that our numbers are relatively small in our school, right? Those classes are roughly 100, 100
Yes.
plus or minus kids. And so the statistical significance of the variance seems to me unlikely in those first three through 7th. The 8th is kind of an outlier. Do other schools see sort of that same kind of drop in 8th grade where maybe the standard just goes up and so they have a harder time meeting it all of a sudden, or?
There is typically a drop in 8th grade. It is not typically a drop as, or a difference as significant as the one that you see before you. The class of 8th graders that we just graduated was a class that had a lot of high achieving students and then several groups of students who needed a lot of support to meet grade level standards. And so you'll see in just a second, if we look at our scores under the old cut scores, the blue dot right there is the graduating class, the 8th grade graduating class from last year who are now freshmen in high school, and the red is our current 8th graders. And so you can see, going back to 2009, 2010, that their scores are almost consistently lower. And as we add them in over time, their scores are always the outlier. And these are under the old cut scores. And so you can see sort of where our student achievement would have been. But we know that the graduating class, the class that are current freshmen, that they increased the number of students who met or exceeded state standards this last year in reading, which is quite fantastic. Most of the other classes either held their own and one class went down.
I think the other thing that I also want to remind everyone is that school districts are starting to report this data out now and have through October 31st to report out. So we really do not have access to comparable data from other districts, although in a very informal Lake County survey, very informal and not statistically significant in any way, it looked like the majority of school districts went down around 20 points. We were nowhere in that percentage at all. So it's a new standard, and certainly our standard is even higher than that. So we've got work to do, but we also need to applaud the good work that's been done.
Absolutely. So
can I just clarify something?
Please.
We mentioned subgroups, and I know it comes up later in the conversation. A question that I had when I first looked at this is, well, why are we looking at those subgroups, or how do we determine those? And that is determined by, is it state law that tells us if you have X number of students who are fill in the blank, then that gives you the subgroup?
Yes, the state and federal laws require that any group of students 45 or more.
Okay. I just wanted to say that so people don't think
Absolutely.
that we randomly chose the...
No, these subgroups as our own, right, yes. No, these are state and federal laws.
And Kevin, you guys are going to, if I'm not mistaken, come back in October when we do get some comparative data November to talk about this in a more put in perspective.
Correct, sir. They are, the scores are embargoed until October 31st. That's when the Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune and everybody else will be printing them in the paper, and you'll see lots of press releases. The state of Illinois has already released some information to indicate that statewide scores are down significantly.
They're prepping us, right?
And they are prepping us. And so in preparation for this board meeting this evening, Jean and I did a whole lot of work scouring other websites to see which other boards had presented already, to see what information we could gather. So
there's not a whole lot yet.
There's not a whole lot out there yet, but once we have those comparisons, we'll be able to get them to you. So in math, again, the same sort of chart here, and our numbers in math are actually a little bit better than our reading scores, which is really great to see. Still, the statistical outlier in this group is our old 8th grade class.
Also, the math is indicative of the 2 to 3 year cycle that we have brought in the math curriculum, the Agile Minds and the Bridges at both of our schools.
But very exciting to see the number of students at the 6th grade level who met or exceeded state standards, and the small number of students who were not able to make state standards. And Susan, you talked a little bit earlier about the small numbers of students, and when we were talking about classes of between 94 and 114 students, 9% of a population, we're talking about 9 students. And while each of those 9 students is important, it's a relatively small number when we're looking at the overall population.
Conclusions about the universe.
Correct.
A sample that small.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you'll see our scores overall. Again, in blue are the scores in the area of math. Blue is meets and exceeds. And so our highest class, the class with the most number of students who met or exceeded state standards was in 6th grade last year. And we were talking with some of the 7th grade teachers today about meeting the needs of students in that class. And so already we're seeing quite a nice bit of differentiation going on in that class with a lot of students who are coming in demonstrating quite a bit of knowledge, which is very nice to see. And with our math curriculum implementation as it goes on, these numbers will increase. And then to give you a bit of the 5-year historical data, this is where the class that just graduated really became all the more apparent to me because they were always the class that was well below where the other classes were. And so we worked really hard with them. The staff before me worked really hard with them, and we know that 90% of them met or exceeded state standards, and I feel like in talking with our current staff that was an effort on everybody's part to make sure that everybody was able to get there. So now talking about subgroup performance. And subgroup performance are groups of students that are within the school and the district that consist of 45 or more students. In 2013, 92.5% of students in the subgroups needed to meet or exceed state standards. If that benchmark was not met, if we increased if we decreased the number of students who did not meet by 10%, and that is really fancy language from the state that I looked at about 5 times before putting this on here. But if we decreased the number of students who did not meet by 10%, then that's what's called safe harbor. District 65 had 3 subgroups this year: students with disabilities, students who are economically disadvantaged, and students who are white. And so the students with disabilities are numbers that we report to the state based on the number of students with individualized educational plans. Students who are economically disadvantaged are students who receive or who are eligible to receive a free or reduced lunch based on federal poverty guidelines, and students who are white are obviously students who identify in that group.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I've got a question then too.
Just a clarification, the students with disabilities you said are kids with IEPs. Does that also include 504 plans or no?
No,
just IEPs?
Just IEPs. We do not report to the state the number of students with 504 plans. Yet. We are, though we've heard that that's coming, we are only required to report to the state the number of students who, and the individual students who have an individualized educational plan.
So when we were talking about AYP, Kevin, and there were a couple questions about why we met AYP even though the number didn't match, what did you discover with that?
The number that was on the one website that we had looked at, there are 2 websites that we use to look at this information. So one of them is called the Illinois Interactive Report Card, which is a public site, and those numbers on there will become public on October 31st. And so that's one place where we look. And then the other place where we get our official score report is from the state in a program called IWAS. And so we log in there and it tells us our AYP status. The two were in disagreement, so we called the Illinois Interactive Report Card, asked why they were in disagreement, and there is a lag time in the reporting of their data. And so the one that was on IWAS was the more accurate one. And so that explained our questions. There was also a question about why the number of students who are Hispanic who were reported in the attendance, but not reported as a subgroup in terms of performance. And the answer that we received is that this is the first year that we would have had a Hispanic subgroup in our district, 45 or more students across the district. Because it's the first year, there would be no way for us to make a safe harbor target, so they do not report on that at all.
So next year they will?
Next year, if we have 45 or more students across the district that are who are Hispanic or Latino, then we'll have that as a subgroup. So our numbers for students with disabilities as a subgroup are an area of growth for us as a district, and you can see that very clearly. Our numbers shift quite dramatically. So district-wide, approximately 41% of our students with disabilities were able to meet or exceed state standards. You can see the numbers up there for the middle school and the elementary school. And the reason that the elementary school has it as a star right next to it is because it is not considered a subgroup at the elementary school, but I reported those out to you so that you could see them for your own analysis. Lake Bluff Middle School had more than 45 students who are a part of that subgroup, and so they're reported officially on the state report card. And then the same numbers for math for students with disabilities. So approximately 38% of our students with disabilities district-wide were able to meet or exceed state standards. And so again, these are areas for growth for us, and as we're talking with our staff about this, not only are we analyzing the data, but you'll see at the end that we're really taking some proactive steps to make sure that these are addressed as the year goes on. And from a philosophical point of view, it comes from holding very high standards for every student in the district. And honestly believing in our hearts and in our minds that every child can learn, and holding them to that high standard as well. And it's a conversation we have nearly every day with our staff. Students with economic disadvantages as a subgroup, approximately 45% of them district-wide were able to meet state standards in reading. Again, they are starred under the middle school and the elementary school here because they are not a subgroup in either of those buildings, but because we have them district-wide, more than 45 students district-wide, it is reported on as a subgroup.
I do want to share one thing with that. Mm-hmm. This is a perfect example. As you get subgroups in your district, this brings to mind from all the work that I did way back as a principal, because this was a very big group in my school district. And it's something that you really have to work with teachers, because kids that come from disadvantaged homes, you often have to meet their basic needs in school prior to teaching them. You have to have different learning strategies. For instance, many of the things we would take for granted, like taking kids to museums or shows, or even to a lake. One of the things when I was working with a child, we were talking about a pier in fishing. And many of these children with economic disadvantages don't have the experiences that the other kids do. So you really have to teach the background knowledge prior to teaching them the material. So there is a different way of teaching, and it just really keeps adding to the repertoire we have for our teachers in teaching for each individual learner.
What's the size of this group district-wide? Roughly.
The number is right there on the second page of that memo. Yep, exactly. And exactly. So
more than 45, or 45 at least.
It would be more than 45 district-wide.
54.
54 students district-wide are in the economically disadvantaged subgroup. In math, we were at approximately 40% district-wide who were able to meet or exceed state standards. Again, this is an area that we're going to need to be focusing on. The current research in education talks a whole lot about how to work with students who come from economic disadvantages, how to work with lots of different students in these different subgroups. And the current research is telling us that as we focus on groups of students like this, it will bring the top up as well. So as we begin to focus more and more on our students with economic disadvantages and our students with IEPs, it will increase the scores for students district-wide, which is very good to hear. So some key takeaways here. While the state raised the cut scores, our students continue to perform well, and the basis for comparison that we have for that is our brief updates from our colleagues in other districts and going to look at their websites on what they've already reported. And so we know that our students continue to perform well. I know that when we initially saw the scores, we were a little bit taken aback. As we started to talk to our colleagues, though, these are actually going to end up being some pretty solid scores. That having students in the 80s meeting or exceeding state standards is going to end up being among the top scores. Math numbers overall are strong and will continue to improve as our common curricular program is implemented yearly. Reading scores, while they're strong, are an area of growth for the district, and we've begun some work in there. There's a need for more focused work during this next summer. Subgroup scores indicate that more work is needed in this area so that students can meet college and career readiness benchmarks. That's why the state raised the cut scores, is so that students who are entering or leaving high school, college and career ready is the language that they're using. And just some future plans here in the district and in the state. ISB plans to release the scores statewide October 31st. The 2014 ISAT will be 100% aligned to the new Common Core. So it will be unlike any test our students have taken before, with certainly much more rigorous test questions, which will be a challenge for us. And then this will also be our last school year of taking the ISAT, because next school year we will replace the ISAT with the PARC assessment. So you see up there what the PARC stands for. It is a consortium of about 21 states across the country that are working together to put together some different assessments for us. So future plans in the district, we need to continue implementing the math core programs and really examine data and learning targets using the ECRA growth model and information from core assessments. In order to focus on our subgroups, we need to examine our intervention materials and our programs to make sure that they are evidence-based and that they are giving us the outcomes that we desire for those specific subgroups, and really target learners in those subgroups for intensive improvement when possible. We need to consider the implementation of a core literacy program. And what I mean by that is that right now at third grade, some of the teachers are using one program to teach spelling, for example, and then in fourth grade, they might be doing a different one. And so we need to examine the implementation of a core literacy program so that all students have a common set of understanding regarding reading and writing, and do the same examination of our intervention materials and target the learners in the subgroups. We need to, and we began this work today with our elementary school teachers, we need to examine our assessment programs, including MAP, COGAT, AIMSWeb, and others to identify early warning signs for students who will meet or exceed state standards. And so I've asked the school psychologists in both of the buildings to really take a look at the students who did not meet or exceed state standards, back their AIMSWeb scores up 2 years, back their COGAT scores up to see where our scores are so that we can have earlier warning signs of students who are not going to meet or exceed state standards. MAP does every 3 years, and the last time that they did this was 2011, but MAP does an alignment study of each state to see how their scores will match up with state assessments. And so, for instance, we know that if you score a 220 in 5th grade, that you have about a 50% chance of meeting or exceeding state standards. And so they give us lots of data about what that should look like. We need to investigate methods for moving more students from the meets to exceeds column. We need to reinvigorate our response to intervention programs, and specifically at the elementary school and special education programs through a focus on evidence-based practices for students in subgroups. And that's exactly what I was talking about before. We need to examine our intervention programs to make sure that they are targeting the right skills and that they are shown to produce evidence, that they demonstrate evidence of effectiveness over time. And then the last piece here is that we need to provide students with a full continuum of gifted and enrichment programs by implementing the recommendations from the Northwestern University Center for Talent Development. We met with a group of parents and families last week to kick off that study, and so you'll be hearing more about that in late January or early February about the study that they're doing of our gifted and enrichment programming. And the thing that all of us keep in mind every day, you will see it on most everything that we have in the district, is to really focus on our district mission and vision. And so while we are only talking about small numbers of students, 9 students in grade level who are not meeting or exceeding state standards, each one of those kids is important to us, and we need to work with each one of those kids to make sure that they are experiencing an excellent education every day, that they are developing an enthusiasm for life, and that we're focusing on them every single day. So, questions?
Can you say more about what you mean is consider the implementation of a core literacy program? Can you say more about that?
So similar to the way that in the area of math, we implemented the Bridges program at the elementary building and Agile Minds at the middle school, we need to consider the same sort of program at the elementary school and middle school for this coming school year. Looking at some core literacy programs so that there is a common bond, common vocabulary, a common framework for working with all of our students district-wide.
So we don't have a curriculum program currently that would be the same from one year to the next or related from one year to the next?
We have core standards at every single grade level, and we are continuously developing our course maps. What we do not have is a common set of materials that we use at every grade level. There's a progression.
Like a Bridges or a...
Like a Bridges or an Agile Minds.
That seems like an important thing to change.
Well, in a district like ours that's very high achieving, you have a couple choices. You have the sets, just like a Bridges or an Agile Minds, that offers many supplemental materials. We also can have teachers write the curriculum. Our scores have been outstanding, but we lose the continuity by doing that. And I think if our teachers either spent all the time doing what we call a scope and sequence and developing that curriculum, that's one option, or we could go with somewhat of a set program and supplement that. So we do have a couple choices, and that's something that Kevin's starting to work with Joanne and a team of teachers in November.
And that actually leads into my question. the future plans all sound good. What's a realistic timeline? And I know it probably is a rolling kind of thing and you can't put a specific, but give us some, I mean, is this school year going to be lost, or will some of these things be implemented by the next semester?
We are never losing a school year, so I don't want you to be concerned about that. But I will give you a couple of, we have a lot of work to do. You are absolutely correct. In October, you'll be hearing a whole lot about the strategic plan and some of the timelines that we are setting for this. Some of those exact same future plans are going to be included in the strategic plan, and so they'll be reported out to you on regular benchmarks. We are going to get the study from Northwestern in late January or early February, and hope to begin implementing the recommendations as soon as feasible. And that means for us this school year when possible, and certainly into the future, so that all of our programs are experiencing a reinvigoration over the next year to 2 years. Curriculum directors across the county met yesterday, and there was a discussion about the sort of good old days when you could examine a curriculum 1 year, do a lot of work on it, and then distribute it to all of the teachers in hard copy form and all of that other stuff, and then look at it again in 5 years. Those days are gone. We are always looking at our curriculum. We are always looking at how we assess students, and we are always shifting our focus to adapt to our ever-changing student population. No year is ever lost, and we are constantly adapting to the changes that are required.
I think the only other thing I would add to that is we still have Janice Heigl in working on Bridges and Agile Minds this year. So that work continues. We've moved to more of a coaching model with her, where she's actually in classrooms with teachers, helping with any concerns or questions that have come up. As far as the language arts, we have Anne Rochelle in. She was working with our teachers throughout the summer. So many of the things that you've seen here, we've started. I think as far as a timeline, I would tell you that you'll see more of a timeline in the strategic planning, but I would also share with you that our world is never constant. So we could give you a timeline today and there would be a new something that we would have to implement by next year. But the timeline in the strategic plan, I think, is going to give you a good indication of where we see different things falling in which years. Because it's important that we hit all of these items. And I think the biggest answer to your question, Julie, and it's what parents want to hear also, is really moving to more of an individualized instructional planning for each child. And we're moving in that direction, and I'd say it would be fully implemented by possibly between the end of next year, which would be June of 2015, but we've started that process now.
So, for example, last week, and I'm going to get the name wrong, but the National History Organization, History Education Organization, released 3 core standards that they are going to be building all of their new standards on. So they call them the C3. And so we got those on Wednesday of last week. I sent them to our teachers on Thursday. And then today, Anne Rochelle was meeting with our social studies teachers from the middle school, talking about what that will mean to our work with students. And so we are moving at a very, very rapid pace, and we will get there.
Just a general question. I know Common Core focuses primarily on math and reading skills, and I have a particular interest in the sciences. Can you just tell us a little bit about where we are moving in that area?
Absolutely. Over the summer, the Next Generation Science Standards were released. They were written in part by Anne Rochelle, who's been working with our teachers. They are far more rigorous. They focus much more on hands-on learning in each of the areas of science. It is less modular, so that 1 year we are no longer focusing on physical science, the next year on life science, and much more of a spiraling curriculum with an increase in rigor each year. The key overlap that we see in all of them in the Common Core standards for math, science, reading, and the first piece of the social studies standards that we've seen is a focus on having students produce evidence for each of their arguments. So asking them a question to produce evidence, and we're talking about this today, produce evidence that Paul Revere's ride may have been fictitious. So students would be asked to write an essay about that, focusing on argumentation that supports their claim. And so we talk about that a lot with our students, and that's the common overlap in all of them. You will be hearing much more about that. The state of Illinois has not adopted the Next Gen Science Standards as their own yet. They are expected to do so in January. And so if those are adopted by the state of Illinois, then you'll be hearing much more about those. And we will be, we've already started the work with each of those teachers.
I think one more thing I do want to point out, and Kevin and I actually had a conversation on this right before the board meeting. One of the things that's very different today than was different for my kids when they were in school is we only have a set amount of time for getting through all the subjects. And we have to get into them with more depth. And so what you're going to start seeing more of is integration. So they may be having their writing time during social studies and science. And they may be doing a science project and tying that in with math. All of that takes teacher time, obviously, to develop those classes and those lesson plans, but there is no possible way with the length of our school days to get all of those subject areas and the core curriculum in without integrating subjects. And so that's another responsibility that our teachers take on, and they really, they are really working hard, and if they ever look tired, they deserve to be tired. Our world is changing every day with all this, so.
I have one additional question, a little bit different, and one of the things that struck me early on in your presentation was talking about the changing standards, the changing targets that we've been teaching toward over the years. Also, the ISAT has changed this year. We added 20% of the questions having to do with Common Core. Next year, they're 100% Common Core based. The following year, the ISAT's gone and they're PARC based.
There are brand new assessments.
Have we got any, well, side question is I wonder if we've got any sneak preview of what that's going to be like. And
we're going to get
what comes after PARC? With all these changes and everything demanded by the state, how much, I wonder if you've given, this is going to be a weird question, but I wonder what your thoughts are on looking beyond what the state asks, because it seems to be a never-ending moving target, and spending more time focusing on our MAT testing, our COJAT testing, our Ames Web, or are there other things that we can focus on as a district that we don't worry so much about? I mean, we do everything the state requires, but we could go above and beyond what they require with our own.
You want to talk about the audit? Again, strategic.
There are a couple things that I will talk with you about. First of all, we are getting some sneak peeks of the PARC assessment nearly probably once a month. The PARC Consortium releases some new framework. They release new sample questions, and so we're getting sort of sneak peeks of what those assessments will look like. It will not be a one-time snapshot of student learning anymore. It will be several different performance-based assessments that go on throughout the year, and then one end-of-the-year summative assessment.
So even more test dates.
There will be more assessments that go on throughout the year. So that's one big change. The other piece that I can share with you is that we were notified a couple of weeks ago that we will be a pilot site for the PARC assessment at 7th grade math. And so ours will be an online assessment. And so the students will take that assessment in April of this year. So we're going to get a sneak peek of that.
Also, April, this curricular
April
year.
of this year,
Pilot.
we will have a pilot in 2 classrooms of the performance-based assessment, which goes on. As I shared with Dr. Sophie yesterday, we were actually one of the districts that have the fewest number of assessments, as we were sharing district-wide and county-wide yesterday. Many school districts in the county have and are implementing several different pilot assessments for Park, including one district in the area that is piloting both the math and the English language arts pilot assessment at 5th grade. And so they are looking at upwards of 9 hours of assessment over the course of the month of April. That is in addition to, per student, that is in addition to the ISAT assessment, because these are just pilot assessments that are going on. And so to answer your question, we really have to look backwards, because the precursor to the ISAT was the IGAP, which was the Illinois Goal Assessment Program. And for years and years in education, we have been focused just on state standards, and every state could have a different set of standards. Over the last 5 to 7 years in education, and you will hear lots of people talk about this, has been the we've seen more change in these last 5 to 7 years than in any time period in the history of education. And so that is both exciting and very, very challenging,
overwhelming,
and overwhelming when you think about the work that we need to do with our students every single day. I would anticipate that we are going to implement the Park assessment, and that over the next 5 to 7 years we will continue to adjust our core standards, and that from that point we will see sort of what that does long-term with our college and career readiness benchmarks, and what that does to college and university populations. Does that really increase the number of students who are ready to go to work upon graduating from college? And what does that look like in our workforce? And so they'll constantly be adjusting the track here.
And meanwhile, we'll be adjusting, because if Park meets the needs of our MAP testing, then we will continuously be looking, because otherwise, eventually our kids could wind up coming to school just for assessments all day. So when you add something, you have to take something away. And that's why part of our strategic plan is Kevin and Joanne will be completing an assessment audit this year that will need to be constantly revisited because of the mandates from the state. Assessment of our assessments. What are we using them for? If we're not using them, then we don't need them.
And that was a common theme that came out during strategic planning is I know that my child takes the COGAT, I don't understand the COGAT, I don't understand why we give it, and so what are we going to use that for? And so we're really taking a much closer look at all of that.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8. A is the President's Report, and underneath that, I'm also going to be talking a little bit about an NSSED report, and Rich is going to chime in a little bit about the Tribe Board report that he attended as part of the committee for the district. Everybody's all gone, but the first thing I want to do is thank those kids who came in and read the poetry and did the presentation on their Water for Ghana work. It was a terrific job, and keep up the good work. Next thing, and this should be a common refrain from me and from this board, just want to remind people who are watching or listening or see this on tape that we want to hear from you. We want to keep the channels of communication open, and please reach out to us if there's anything you want to discuss. Dr. Sophie's and all of our contact information is on the website. I wanted to give some shout outs to our administrators for the successful and smoothly run curriculum nights at both the middle and elementary school. Apparently that all went very smoothly. I wanted to thank the teachers for coming in at night and getting this done on the curriculum nights. Also to thank all the parents who took time to come in and visit with their children's teachers. We appreciate that your lives are busy and that you make time for such important events. At the middle school, I wanted to point out that we had a smooth and successful outdoor education trip to Camp Edwards in East Troy, Wisconsin for 7th graders. Big thank you to all the administrators and teachers who were involved in pulling that off. It's a big job. I wanted to remind the board that we are going to need to recommit to a closed session board training and development session with our IASB rep, Barb Tony. Hopefully not in the too far distant future. We had to cancel our last one because we decided that we needed to have full attendance to really get the most out of that. We'll be looking at dates as soon as possible, but I think from what I'm hearing, it's not going to be till the new year. We need to consider that while some of us may feel that development may not be necessary, that it's too touchy-feely or too unstructured, it's really important for us to strive for continuous improvement in this area. It's good for us to demonstrate to the community, to the administration, and to our teachers that we as a board are committed to improvement for ourselves individually, for our board as a whole, and for the whole district. It's one of those things where we lead by example and we can do more than talk the talk. We can walk the walk in this case. So actions speak louder than words, and let's commit to that as soon as we can. Jean's going to be getting us dates from Barb as soon as she can, and we'll arrange another one of these board development sessions fairly soon. I said I was going to get into an NSSED report. We had my last NSSED report was on June 18th, regarding was at our June 18th meeting, and since then we've only had one NSSED meeting. That was on August 29th. The NSSED does not typically meet during the summer. It was the first meeting of the new fiscal year for NSSED, and the first seating of most of the new governing board members. Of the 18 districts that make up the governing board, I think 9 have new representatives to the board, so there's a lot of new faces. Jean and I, prior to the meeting, met with the new governing board rep from District 115, that's our high school district, Ted Mormon, ahead of time. It was good to have coffee and get to know each other. NSSED is an issue that we all, the 3 districts, 115, 67, and 65, take very seriously. We'll also be having a sit down with the new rep from District 67. I think his name is Mike Borkowski. In the not too distant future. So we want to maintain and develop those relationships. As part of the barrage of emails you guys received in preparation for this meeting, you also received an email with summaries of that last NSSED board governors meeting. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I wanted to draw attention to a couple of things. You can read all about it in your handout, and if you have questions, don't ever hesitate to ask me. But currently, the NSSED has 2 governing bodies. They have what they call the governing board, which is what I sit on, and each of the 18 member districts contribute 1 person to, and they have the executive board. The executive board reports to the governing board. It's a much smaller board, and it's made up of just a few governing board members, a few regional superintendents, and the NSSED administrators. The governing board is all, like I said, all 18 rep, all 1 rep from each district. The executive board takes care of some of the more administrative things that would be too cumbersome for the governing board to handle, such as discipline issues with employees. The governing board would then make recommendations to the executive board. So that's the current model of boards at NSSED. And one of the big topics at the last meeting and going forward is they're considering reviewing that model. Considerations being given to reducing the role and responsibilities of the executive board. One argument in favor of that change is to eliminate a layer of administration between the administration and the governing board. Another big takeaway from that meeting that I thought was interesting is related to a service that Lake Bluff historically has not taken much advantage of. Last year, NSSED provided over 170 professional development workshops open to member staff on topics such as autism assessment, executive functioning, curriculum, networking, behavior, RTI, technology, transition, and a variety of other topics. Over 2,700 NSSED and district staff, that's from all the 18 member districts, attended these workshops. Lake Bluff had 8 people attend workshops, and some of those might be double counted. These workshops are at low or no cost to us, and much of the fees are included in our annual fee whether we use them or not. Similarly, NSSED hosts professional networks for educators to be involved with, for special education professionals in a variety of specialties. In all, last year, 285 staff members throughout the 18 member districts participated in these discussions, and these are great ways for professionals to network with each other and address issues and concerns that they have. In addition, NSSED provides coaching to teachers in the districts and administrators that provide services in many of these same kinds of areas that they provide workshops in. So my point here is, the bottom line is, NSSED offers a lot of services that we have not historically taken advantage of, and it's worth taking a look at. Looking at these things a little more closely. A final takeaway from NSSED was that they, like District 65, are going into a bargaining year. Their contract with their primary union ends at the end of this current fiscal year. And one of the interesting things I thought that they shared with us is that they expect that they and the union are going into negotiations without any legal representation. Just thought that was interesting. They're not going to have unions on either side of the table. I mean, not have lawyers on either side of the table. And then, last but not least, I'm going to ask Rich to update us and summarize a meeting between the tri-board committees of District 65, the Village of Lake Bluff, and the Park District that he attended a couple weeks ago.
Thank you, Mark. We had a very good meeting. It was down on the shores of Lake Michigan, which is a pretty nice place to meet there at the pavilion. I think it underscores how fortunate we are to live in this community. Jean, Sophie, and Christine and I were joined by Kevin Considine and Rob Douglas of the Park District, as well as Kathy O'Hara and Eric Grenier from the Village Board. And I can tell you these people are very talented, dedicated, committed citizens of Lake Bluff. And their interest was certainly in trying to assist each other in areas such as shared services or shared facilities. Everyone's trying to understand what the long-term capital goals are of each organization so that we try to move in the same direction on them. If there are things that we can share or things that we can help each other on. It was a very cooperative meeting and truly a sense of trying to put the interests of the Lake Bluff citizens ahead of whatever their own personal interests were.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item B under reports, and Tracy Rorick is going to give us the elementary school interim principal report. Tracy.
So we had our first curriculum night, or our curriculum night for this year, which was a great success. We had 2 sessions for parents so that families didn't have to give up seeing one teacher for another. They were able to visit 2 different classrooms. And the end of the night was the laptop training for parents of 5th graders. So that finished out the night for us. Use of brain breaks are still going strong within the building, and students are loving every minute of it. Next week, staff will be attending Capturing Kids' Hearts, which promotes positive teaching of expectations and building relationships. And last, LBES was named one of the top 10 schools in the county for Attendance Week. So there will be a ceremony on Monday where the school, some of the members of the school will be honored, so, for attendance.
Very exciting.
Item C, next, Nate Blackmer from the middle school will give us his principal report.
Good evening. Curriculum nights at Lake Bluff Middle School went very well. We, as we have done in the past, had a 6th grade curriculum night for all parents new to the school. And then the 7th and 8th grade curriculum nights were combined into one. To hopefully minimize the number of evenings away for parents, we also combined that 7th and 8th grade curriculum night with the 7th grade outdoor education, Lake Bluff Education Parent Informational Night. Mouthful, but I think it was valuable for those parents who were able to be there. And I'm pleased to announce that our outdoor education and Lake Bluff education trips were a great success. Both took place last week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We did manage some thunderstorms in East Troy. They did come at a time when we were able to adjust and not lose out on any programming, so that was exciting for us. We have our next trip coming up at the end of October. That's October 31st, November 1st and 2nd. That's the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. We've begun our drills for the return back to school. We have already completed a fire drill that was on September 13th. pleased to announce that we evacuated the building in record time, 1 minute and 15 seconds. Students were very excited about that. We have an upcoming lockdown drill on Thursday. That's this coming Thursday, the 26th. That will be taking place in the morning. 9:30, Lake Bluff Police Department will be assisting with that. We also then have a severe weather drill the following day, Friday the 27th, and that will be in the morning where the students will evacuate from classrooms to their shelter areas within the building. Just a few sports updates. Girls field hockey won the LFA Invitational last weekend. That was very exciting. 8th grade girls volleyball beat Deer Path last night. And I just found out that the 7th grade soccer team also beat Deer Path this evening. One thing to keep in mind for the first week of October, or first full week of October, on Wednesday, October 9th, that is Unity Day. As part of Unity Day, we're encouraging all of our staff to wear orange. The focus being that we'll be talking a lot about bullying, anti-bullying, what to do if you're the victim or a bystander to bullying. And we'll be doing one of our Bluffer Booster activities for all of our 6th grade students on that day, October 9th. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
So now we follow with item 8E, 8D, the superintendent's report. Dr. Sophie.
Okay. I'm just going to fill in some gaps in a couple different places. First of all, the lockdown drills will be practiced on Thursday, and there will be an alert now going home to let parents know that this is, I'm glad you mentioned it so that I remember. So the parents do know and can alert their children, especially with the events of last year. As I mentioned before, and I will mention it again in public, Illinois law now requires us to have shooting drills. This does not have to occur when students are on or present or in the building. So sometime between July 1st of this year and June 30th, the police department will have to come in and work with staff, and we will have to have a shooting drill per Illinois law. A couple other things I wanted to mention for those of you that have tuned in for this evening. Our test score presentation will actually be on our website tomorrow. So it will be available under our board tab, excuse me, and our actual student test scores are being mailed home on Friday of this week. So individual student reports will also be sent home. Last minute today, I did receive some information from Ben Martindale. There's 2 different handouts there. You can pass these out. One of these will be on our website. The other one will be seen in a national journal. Ben Martindale, as you know, is with school, Hazard Young and Atia. And I have met with him and talked to him on the phone several times. So we have our LBES principal search schedule. I want to review that with all of you. Both of us felt that by the end of October, administrators usually have their minds kind of made up if they're going to be interviewing or looking for new positions. So during the month of October, Dr. Martindale will be doing interviews within the community, focus groups. There's a survey that will be sent to all the LBES parents. By October 24th and 25th, he is also going to publicize those surveys and focus groups at parent-teacher conferences so parents know about them so we can get even more feedback. The leadership profile report will be actually presented to me after all the surveys are in. We're thinking more towards the beginning of November. Screening interviews will be early November. The slate will be presented to me by late November. There'll be panel interviews of slated candidates December 9th, 10th, and 11th. Selection of finalists will be in mid to late December, and then finalist interviews early January, site visits mid-January, and the board will meet, will discuss, and then approve in late January. So we're looking at least 5 months of transition time that will be allowed with the new principal in mind, and we'll be first on the slate to hire our new principal. We're very excited about our timeline. Also, I passed out copies of the ad for our principal position. Ben and I both felt that the majority of administrators now will look at positions online. So we will be posting this on EdWeek Online, and then many of our professional organizations that we belong to, I think Ben mentioned 5 or 6 other sites that this will be posted on. So the search for our long-term and long-standing LBES principal is on, and parents and staff will be actively involved as far as getting the profile together. So
has this gone out yet?
It has not.
I think Ben might have fallen victim to the same thing that I sometimes do, and I refer to how many minutes north of Chicago we are rather than how many miles. So we're only 35 miles north of Chicago. 45 miles makes us sound like we're in Wisconsin. So I think we're either 45 minutes or we're 30 miles.
I will correct him on that.
Anybody else have any questions?
Good thing I brought it to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see if I have anything else. The only other item I wanted to apprise you all of is that our teacher evaluation electronic tool is finally ready after fighting over it for 3 months. So we will be starting our teacher evaluations and observations. And we're all very excited about starting our process. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next item under reports, item E.
No.
One clarification. I just want to clarify who we're fighting with.
The company.
Right, okay, there's no fighting with teachers, there's
No,
no
no, no,
fighting
no, no.
amongst ourselves, there's no fighting. The company.
Clarification is with the company because
The vendor.
it was supposed to be ready August 27th.
Everybody agrees we're having evaluations and like they're.
We have a nice committee that works together.
Excellent.
Good. And now we'd like to invite Ann Stewart from the PTO up to give us the PTO report.
Hello, everyone. As I was preparing my notes, I realized the PTO has been doing a lot of social functions, which I suppose is good to front load those at the beginning of the year. So we've had in the past few weeks a kindergarten ice cream social, a new family welcome party held last Thursday, and the 6th grade social event held at the beach this past Sunday, all very well attended. We're happy about that. Also want to highlight, first of all, a thank you to the people involved at the schools for the summer reading program. The participation was up 40% over last year, so that's great news. So thanks to those people involved. LBES, we have food days. The enrollment for food days ends technically tomorrow. We will be keeping the web store up one more day, so for those of you who have not ordered, please do. Lots of yummy food to be had on the last day of each week this year. We also have our web-based directory up and running. We are waiting for people to verify their information over the next week, and then we will be printing a hard copy. Hard copies will be for sale hopefully in about 3 weeks for $5 each. And upcoming dates, we have Pumpkin Fest in Chase October 18th and 19th. They're expecting about 500 runners, so this, I believe, is about a record. And sponsorship is going very well, and one of the co-chairs did want me to let everyone know that there will be a full moon for the Haunted Forest. Very important. October 15th, we have the Spirit of the Eagle presentation for first graders about Native American life, and then October 24th and 25th will be the LBES Book Fair. One thing that the PTO at LBES did vote on once again is that all profits from Book Fair will go to our Books for All program that we initiated last year, and that basically means that we get a book based on the curriculum taught at the grade levels in the hands of each kid K through 5. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Can't wait for the food days to start. Love that on Friday.
Okay, now we're going to move into item 9, action items with discussion. And our first item is the approval of our audit report. And I'm going to ask Jane Laird to give us a little brief introduction as to why we need to do this.
Okay. Yes, our annual audit was completed this past July and August, and I believe you all got a report last week. We have our auditors here this evening, Kevin Canavy and James Henry, and they're going to give you a brief overview of the audit. We have an annual independent audit performed on basically on our books every year, as we're required to do, but also as we just should do because we're handling taxpayers' dollars. And so this is the second audit performed by Evoy Kim Schulte. Sorry, that's a long one. This is my 10th audit in the district. This is our third audit firm. I believe that we should not work with any one particular auditing firm for more than 7 years. I think it's in the district's and the taxpayers' best interests that I don't get too comfortable with an audit firm and they don't get too comfortable in the district. So we should see these gentlemen around for another few years. But with that, if you gentlemen will take place at your podium and give us a brief overview, and then if board members have any questions, I'd be happy to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. Before we get into the statements, I'd just like to say the audit went very well. We didn't run into any problems. Your accounting records are in excellent shape. If you want, basically, there's two sets of financial statements in here. There's the government-wide financial statements and there's the fund statements. Well, first we'll talk about our opinion. If you go to page 2, we have two auditor reports in here. One's on the financial statements, one's basically on internal controls. And basically, you have a clean opinion except for one minor GASB omission, and it's basically for GASB 45 post-retirement or post-employment benefits, which is common with schools because it's an actuarial determined number, and you'd have to spend a few $1,000s to come up with it. So not most schools, but several schools just don't get it done, and they get this little qualification. And then the next report's on internal controls, and basically on our testing we found no deficiencies or anything while we were testing internal controls. And if you want to get to, I'm just going to go over the highlights. If you have any questions about anything in here, you feel free to ask. But if you want to turn to page 10.
We go back to page 8 for a minute.
Okay.
Somehow we went to, in 2012 we had $15 million in furniture and equipment, and then we went down to $1,455,000 in furniture and equipment.
You know what? I'm going to have to check on that. That definitely does not look right. It's probably a typo. I mean, it should go down very little with depreciation.
Well, okay, so it's not only a typo there, but the math, if math went along with the typo.
Well, yeah, that might have. It's an Excel. So if we go to page. We actually have a schedule of your fixed assets in the back, in the footnotes. Yeah, if you go to page 29. You know what? I'm going to have to check on that because it looks like 2012's number is wrong. The prior year is wrong. The 2013 number is correct, but the prior year number is wrong.
15 million in fixed assets is a pretty hefty number.
For equipment, yes it is. For buildings, no, but for equipment, that's pretty hefty.
I knew we were doing some nice decorating though.
So I will check. We'll make the correction on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Thanks.
I have just a quick question before we go a little further. Internal controls, can you just give me a little idea?
Well, we don't do a full-fledged internal control audit, but we do test certain, we'll test disbursements, we'll test receipts to make sure that we think that your controls are adequate so that we can rely on our testing.
And in testing receipts, for example, how many do you go out and test?
Well, like I'll confirm a lot of your, 100% of your property taxes, because that's your largest.
Right.
So we confirm 100% of that. Replacement taxes, state money, Fed money. So we probably confirm 99% of your receipts. And now testing, it's a much smaller, we don't.
And payables?
Payables, we go through the check registers after the end of the years and see what we believe should be included as a payable.
Okay.
So if you go to page 10, now this is the school district's overall financial statements, and this includes fixed assets. So if you go to the middle of the page, you can see where your total assets are $62 million. Now that includes fixed assets of $31 million. Your total liabilities are $38 million. So you have a total net position of $24 million. And that's basically your balance sheet with fixed assets. The next page is your income statement of activities. The first column is basically your expenses by category, by department. And then if you go to the final column, if you go 3 lines from the bottom, you can see where your net position actually increased by $1.3 million. And that's including fixed assets. Are not included in that number, but depreciation is. And that's where, in the next statements, we're actually going to talk about, there won't be depreciation, but you'll be the capital outlay expenses.
And that flows basically in our fund balance, correct?
Yeah, the next ones will be your actual fund balance. Okay. So page 11, basically your net position increased by the $1.3 million. So if you go to page 12, now these are the start of the fund financial statements. And I like these better because you can actually see by fund, or you can see in total. So if you go to the second line from the bottom, you can actually see what your total fund balances are per fund. You can see that the education fund has $12.9 million fund balance. Operations, which is the building fund, has $1.7 million. Transportation has $1 million. And then if you go over to the end, you can see that the total fund balances are $16.7 million, and that does not include fixed assets. If you go to page 14, which is probably the most, I like this the best, because it actually gives you, this is basically your income statement by fund, so you can actually, and gives you a good idea what your revenues and everything are. And it gives you by fund, and then you can have, there's the total column. So if you go, the first column is the ed fund. Again, if you go from the third line up, now this is where we actually expense capital outlay. So if you bought a new building, it would show up as an expense here. But you didn't buy a new building. So if you go up 3 lines from the bottom, you can see that the ed fund went up by $1.5 million. The building fund went up by $400,000. The transportation fund went up by $99,000. The IMRF fund went down by $59,000. Working cash went up by $26,000. Bond and interest went up by $8,000. And the capital projects fund went up by $19. So your overall fund balance has increased by $2 million. And now I'm not going to go into these other statements, but if you want more detail, if you want to see your budget and you want to compare them to your actuals, you can do that starting on page 16. And if you want more detail on your individual fund statements, it begins on page 41, and that'll give you the budget and actual also. And that's pretty much my presentation, unless you have any questions. I will take care of that one item.
Does anybody have any questions? Will this be available on our website?
Will this be available on our website?
Okay.
Just about when? After the correction.
I'll send it to Nancy tomorrow.
Okay, so it will be available, and what will we do? Okay.
It's under business office reports.
Okay.
As will the annual financial report as well.
So everything will be on the district website tomorrow. And we'll have to make the correction somehow, maybe even in pen. So.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to act on this now too. So may I have a motion to approve the audit report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Can I have a roll call vote on that, please?
John Rosen?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Leanne Charlo? Yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Motion is passed. Thank you. Let's see. 9B. Approval of the budget for 2013 and 2014. Early on during our budget hearing, I reviewed the history of this, and John gave us a pretty thorough overview of where we're at. I don't know, does anybody desire more discussion prior to go into a vote on this?
No.
Okay. I would,
I will move to approve the budget.
I'll second.
I think Susan, you have a question?
After the motion.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
John, okay. And discussion? Susan?
So in the board materials, there's a great deal of information about deficit reduction plan, and I know that we've been planning to have this deficit spend year this year. We reduced taxes last year, knew that this was going to happen. Am I reading it correctly that we don't have to have a deficit reduction plan, but you've included in the materials what one might look like?
I included it because that is the entire budget, state budget form.
Oh, I see.
In its entirety, but there is a place where it indicates a budget deficit plan is not required at this time.
Okay. Okay, so that's why the materials are there, not because we might possibly need one for this year.
This is the complete state budget form.
What would trigger our requirement that we would need one?
If we didn't have, if we were deficit spending by $1 million, but we didn't really have the funds to cover it.
I see.
They understand that we're spending down reserves.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Julie, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Leanne Charlotte?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Marizan?
Yes.
Thank you. The vote is approved. Next, personnel recommendations, and I need to pull up my report here for just a second. Bear with me. Can I have a motion to approve the personnel recommendations as presented in your packet? We have a resignation of Dennis Haggerty at LBMS, and we have a maternity child care unpaid leave for Anna Ogren at the middle school. May I have a motion to approve the personnel recommendations as provided?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion or questions or comments? None. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Julie Gottschall, yes. Leanne Charlotte?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes. Motion is approved. Okay. Under action items D, we would like to, may I have a motion to approve of the additional teacher aide at LBES in the early childhood kindergarten program? I want to make sure that I have what I need in front of me.
So moved.
I don't have a name.
Dennis Haggerty?
We don't have a name, it's just the position.
Okay, it's just
We've
the
already
position. Right. So we have a first and a second.
First and second,
Okay.
so I'll go with the roll
Can we have a roll
call.
call vote, please?
Leanne Charlotte?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes.
Thank you. Moving along, item E. May we have a motion to approve the application of recognition of schools for 2013 and 2014? Jean will give us a little overview of that when we get to discussion.
Every year in the month of September, we will be bringing the recognition status of our schools. This is not recognition like recognition as we would think of it. It's recognition that we are compliant with state requirements. And because we are compliant and in line, we can receive our state funding, etc. So with that, both of our schools are fully recognized, and I bring to you the vote to recognize them as our school code dictates.
Okay, can I have an approval to of the application for recognition of schools in 2013, 2014?
So moved. Second.
Second, and do we need a roll call for that? Probably not.
No, you can do voice vote on that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, F. We would like to have, may I please have a motion to approve educational support personnel seniority list as provided in your packet for 2013 and 2014?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about what this means?
This seniority list is voted on every year here in the district, and it just shows where everybody falls as far as years served in the district.
And why does that need to be addressed and approved?
Well, we're doing it right now. It's just recognition for the board that these people have worked in the district for so long. They're not a member of a bargaining contract.
Okay.
So.
And that's a requirement?
It's not a requirement. It's something we've done here in the past every year.
Okay.
But we don't know what the origin is particularly?
No, and this will be covered in our personnel audit. The person that's coming in to review all these things. In the meantime, I bring it to for your approval this evening because it just honors the years of service that they have in the district as far as seniority.
I see some befuddlement as to why we're doing this. I share it. It is what it is. Why would we need to approve that? I have no problem recognizing good service, of course, but this
is just our seniority list. If we had to reduce, we could reduce on seniority. We could reduce on other items. Again, this is not a bargaining group, but this is something that the district has brought for board approval, and I would ask the board to approve this tonight until we get an audit and have all of our practices reviewed.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
We do. We have a motion and a second. So if you want to call it.
I don't think this is a roll call vote, is it? Seniority? Well, it could be. If
It could be either one.
So let's do a roll call vote just to play it safe.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Leanne Charlotte.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion approved. Item G, approval of policies. This is our second reading of these policies. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Should I read them all? Probably should, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have 8 policies to approve. 2:105 is the ethics and gift ban policy. 2:120 is the board member development policy. 2:150 is committees. 5:10 is equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment. 5:20 workplace harassment prohibited. 6:120 education of children with disabilities. 7:230 is misconduct by students with disabilities. And 7:340 is student records.
I would just like to share a couple items. First of all, I want to remind everybody that in policy 2.105, changes were made for substantiation for vendor receipts. And we can change wording. This is the time we would do it.
I did want to comment on that. It's more than wording. It's more the concept of how the data is reported and collected. The change that was made calls for an annual disclosure sheet to be collected every June for each administrative board member and their staff members. I'm just wondering what the mechanism for that is. I mean, what I would envision is that people report or keep some record on an ongoing basis that can be...
That, you are correct. That would be an administrative procedure that we would have to work on with the law firm to determine exactly how we would collect that. So once a policy is approved, we will go ahead and work on an administrative procedure for that.
Okay, but the policy does say it will be collected every June.
Correct.
Which is fine. I'm just wondering if we can put something on there or will be presented upon request if the board wants to see it somewhere in the meantime before June. Yeah, I'm just wondering, maybe what you're telling me is that that's to be decided, but it seems to, the language would suggest to me that it's just once a year, here's my full year of entertainment disclosures. And I would like to ensure that there's some mechanism in there where it could be reviewed sooner if an administrator or the board wanted to see it.
It seems like rather than collect it once every June and ask people to remember what they did in September, we ought to be saying that it'll be maintained. That it'll be maintained and we'll get a report on it once a June.
Once a year.
Maybe that's the term, so that
will be maintained and collected.
Will be maintained on a monthly basis and
Well, then somebody has to go in and make sure that that's being done.
Well, I think we can have it as policy without checking to make sure it's done. Then it would be presented upon request or in June.
But then they would have to,
Then I have to monitor it. That's my concern.
And I mean, I'm great with monitoring for ethics, but I have to say, there's not like a lot of activity either that's being recorded and documented and we're not getting a lot of gifts and
We're not. I don't know what the administration's getting. I have no idea how big an issue this is or not. I simply don't know. But it would seem to, I don't necessarily see why it would be something you have to monitor. We have a policy out there. If you go looking for it, and presumably you won't ever have to or want to, but if you were to do it and you discover somebody hasn't been recording it, then you have an issue. But I wouldn't expect you to. Or
That's
anyone
why I
to.
think the word maintained really indicates that. If it says maintain monthly, then in my job, I would feel like I would need to collect them monthly to make sure that they're being done.
Well, if it doesn't, how often does this actually happen?
Now, I think I've had one gift the whole time I've been here.
So
and it was a cup of coffee.
Why not state it in such a,
at the tri-conference.
why not report it as it occurs if it only occurs once a year? Rather than having an end of year report, when it happens, report it and that's the end of it.
And then there's the monitoring isn't really as much.
Right, you don't have to worry about it.
And what everybody
Are we
wants to
worried
do.
about monitoring it, or? are we
No,
worried-
just to report. If it only happens once or twice a year, you don't have to monitor anything. Just have people report it and then it's done with.
Report it how? Because administrators then are responsible for carrying out and developing the administrative procedure for this.
Yeah.
And then I'm in charge of making sure that it happens.
You don't need another
I don't
procedure.
need more, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, I get back to, there can be a form. Everybody can keep the form in their desk or at their disposal, and when they go out, they just write it down on the form. And then
Right.
when we think we want to see what people are doing, we ask, okay, on March 1st, please turn in all your forms, and we'll just take a look.
Which all we have to do with what we've got written is say maintain, and will be collected every June or at any time requested.
Upon request,
Okay.
exactly.
That's fine.
Going back to the list, board member development, we changed the wording to say board members will engage in a self-evaluation at least once every other year. Committees we just reviewed. I want to remind everybody that 510 and 520 this round, we only changed our complaint managers. Terry Hodges will be coming to talk to you about Section 5 policies at the October, 22nd meeting, whatever meeting that is. Policies 6.120, 7.230, and 7.340, two of them were review and one had the new changes in it. So what I would recommend, since this is second reading, and we've already discussed the couple policies, is anything you want to talk about then individually we can pull, otherwise you can vote on all of them at the same time tonight.
Does anybody have individual policies they want to talk about?
Other than the point I just raised, I don't. If we can make a motion with that as amended, would that work?
So I'm going to ask.
The policies as presented with amendment
2.105.
to
2.105.
2.105.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the policies as presented and with the specific amendment to 2.105? May I have a motion to approve those policies as presented and amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I'm sorry, was that you, John?
Yes.
Yep. And we have a roll call vote, please.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Marsden?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Leanne Charlotte?
Yes.
Richard Hague?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you. Now we move on to item H, approval of P-card report. I need to get organized here. May I have a motion to approve the P-card report as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Or is there any discussion on that? Questions, comments? Vote, please. Roll call vote.
John Marsden?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Leanne Charlotte?
Yes.
Richard Hague?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Okay, item I, approval of bills payable. May I have a motion to approve the bills payable as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And is there discussion?
The only question I had, I did raise a question regarding one of the payables, and it related to the 401k expense. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? We have teachers contributing to a 401k?
Yeah, it's a 403B, I'm sorry. It's a 403B, tax sheltered annuity. That's all through payroll with withholding. JEM Resources is our third-party administrator for all 403Bs.
Okay. So that's withheld for certain employees?
For those staff members who sign up to participate in a 403B, they elect to have so many dollars at their choice deducted from their paychecks, and we send it to JEM, who then sends it on to their particular vendor for their 403B
And what's a 403B?
It's provided for schools, universities, and I believe hospital employees. It's a tax sheltered annuity.
So it's similar to a 401k?
Yeah, it is similar, with no employer match.
And teachers or employees have an opportunity to elect that as in lieu of a pension or in addition?
No, it's in addition to.
Okay.
It's in addition to.
Okay. And they select the amount as?
They select the amount up to a
limited
limit every
cap.
year, yes.
Okay.
And, yeah. And they can select their own vendor as well.
Okay.
Anybody have any other questions? Can we have a roll call vote?
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Julie Godshall, yes. Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Richard Heck?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Marizan?
Yes.
The motion is approved. Thank you. Item J, approval of the treasurer's report. Can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any discussion, questions, or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Julie Godshall, yes. Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Richard Heck?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Marizan?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes. The motion is approved. Thank you. Approval of activity reports. May I have a motion to approve the activity reports as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Can I have anybody have questions or comments or discussion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Richard Heck?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Marizan?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Godshall? Yes.
Motion's approved. Item L, the consent agenda. The approval, just a second, did my print get cut off? Okay. Every month, the board can choose to place items that are either reoccurring, such as the approval of previous minutes, annual responsibilities, such as the appointment of a school treasurer for next year, or items of a regulatory nature that must, by law, be approved by the board. These items can be combined into one motion and passed together as part of a consent agenda. The board regularly screens its consent agenda each month and removes motions from it that, in the board's judgment, might otherwise require discussion or comment. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the following items on the consent agenda? Number 1, special meeting minutes, August 20th, 2013. 2, regular meeting minutes, August 27th, 2013. 3, closed session meeting minutes, A, August 27th, 2013. 4, closed session meeting minutes, B, August 27th, 2013. 5, special meeting minutes, September 5th, 2013. 6, committee of the whole meeting minutes, September 10th, 2013. And 7, destruction of closed session tapes for February 28th, 2012 and March 20th, 2012. Does anybody need any of those things withdrawn from the consent agenda? May I please have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Somebody say second.
Leanne first, Susan was second.
You guys gotta be faster. May I have roll call vote, please?
Richard Heck?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
John Marizan?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Julie Godshall? Yes. Leanne Charlo?
Yes.
Okay, great progress. So that concludes our action items. And we are on to a brief discussion of future agenda items. These are some things you've seen regularly over the past few months. We need to talk about in the future an appointment of an IAASB representative who will represent us at the conference, right? We will revisit our policies on bullying and harassment after it gets rewritten by our lawyer. And we will have an in-depth presentation of strategic planning at our October 15th, of the newest version of our strategic plan at our October 15th meeting.
Yes.
Are there items that people would like to see on the list of future agenda items that we haven't already discussed at one time or another?
Well, you know, I was feeling hopeful when I saw the yuppie puppy item used to be on the future agenda items list, and I'm disheartened to see that it's been dropped.
It
and I think for the ink that we've spent on putting it on the agenda, we could spend the 5 minutes to dispense with it.
We need to discuss it, and that actually will be on when we talk about facilities at the October 7th meeting. It just fits right in.
There is a longer list of future agenda items. This is just the kind of hotter ones.
On the in the October 7th meeting, refresh my memory, is that when we also have our bond, the
That's
BLD discussion and our bond discussion?
We'll have BLDD, bond discussion, the frontispiece, yuppie puppy, which, by the way, it's a chain because there's a yuppie puppy that just went up on my house. So
maybe you can move the frontispiece to your.
And the fund balance policy as well at that meeting?
We'll put it down. We'll see how much you can get through.
Because they're all kind of connected.
Yes, they are.
Jean, I think you said that Terry Hodges was going to be out for the October 22nd meeting?
She will be. At the strategic planning is October 15th. The bullying and harassment is the October 22nd meeting.
What is the purpose of Terry's visit?
She is coming to talk to us about negotiations because we need to get rolling on that. She is also coming to answer any policy questions that you have.
Would it be at all possible to move that to the November 7th meeting, just because that's the meeting where I'm traveling, and I'd very much like to be a part of that discussion?
I can ask her if she has that date available.
Right.
Seems to be appropriate for the committee of the whole as well, those discussions, right? Rather than the action meeting? Discussion with Terry.
I think we set the date only because negotiations is in mind. And then we figured if Terry was going to be here, she could also discuss policy. If she's available, November 7th, I'll see you and we can
November
schedule that.
5th.
There is
It's the 5th.
I would appreciate that.
I'll check on that. Because negotiations, we have some things we've got to get done soon, so.
Is there anything else that anybody on the board would like to raise that hasn't been raised or discussed that you want to raise? Okay. No?
No.
I heard it.
I'm ready to go home.
I heard you inhale, so I thought that was a message.
I'm exhale, I'm ready to go home.
Were the people on the bond issues going to get back to us with variations on percentages of our fund balance?
Well, I think what we asked for was a couple of different approaches based on our discussion at the last meeting. I'm assuming they're going to come back with that.
Is that going to happen before our meeting? That's my concern.
That would be helpful.
Why don't you clarify that for Jane again?
Yeah, I just talked to Elizabeth today. She just called to check in to see where we were and when we were meeting some things. And because she was going to revise, as I recall, one of the options to have a better, softer.
Right. We were going to level out, right?
What we were wanting.
That was one thing. We were also talking about only having, what if we were only having a 40%? I mean, she drew up different models, and we asked her to do some other models, and I'd like to see those prior to having her come in.
Well, we talked about using more of the reserve dollars for abatement purposes to level out that fund debt in the future. And we also, I think, said what would happen if we decided to use more than 40% of the fund balance. That was the assumption that she used. I think it was $5 million. What if we decided to use $6 or $7 million? Yeah. I think that's the two things that we asked for.
Okay. And I know the BLDD report we said would be ready by October 1st, correct?
Correct.
So when's October 1st? I'm still trying to figure out my calendar.
It's next Wednesday, I think.
So we're going to have to, maybe if we could have Liz Hennessy get us her materials, by then we could send it all together.
Sure.
So everybody would have that.
Is there anything else that anybody else has other things they want to raise? Okay, I'm going to move on to a final public comment period. If anybody would like to address the board or say anything, please don't hesitate. step up to the mic? Anybody?
Don, I never heard you this quiet before.
If nobody else would like to address the board, feel free to do that next time or send us an email. With that, we have a closed session, but we don't need to do that. We're not going to pass. We're going to pass that, and I would like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Can you guys? There's a